Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Edwion. Welcome to the release of the 2023 and Q1 2024 Nigeria Violence Conflict Report. This report highlights the trends and patterns, causes, and consequences of violent conflicts in Nigeria. It also covers a broad range of data, from conflict styles to hotspots and number of casualties. Finally, this report contains recommendations on ways and means of changing this situation, which are altering our social, cultural, political, religious, and developmental landscape. I'll now invite Dr. Lucien Ngofulu for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who have joined us both physically and online for the release of next year violence report for 2023 and first quarter of 2024. Next year is an international development which works with evidence. We have our interest in the power sector, peace and security, energy transition, as well as health. Been in existence for the last 11 years, and of course, I'm sure every Nigerian knows the kind of work, the rigor and the kind of work. Our database is something we've done or collected over the last 4 years. Sometimes started sometime in 2020. So what we try to do is to track those difficult and violent issues in the country and be able to come up with recommendations that will help government in finding solutions to them. The report will be showing today will show Nigerians how since 2023 to first quarter 2024, the number of casualties and the incidents, especially incidents like former header conflict, banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, secession agitation, cultism, and so on. In this report, we will show Nigerians how the first quarter of 2023 had a kind of a slowdown, maybe because we wanted to have the election. We deployed all that mattered to be able to have the election, and after the election, wow. However, in as much as this report is not going to be predictive, but we'll be able to show the trend and the pattern of what have happened in the country over the years. And most importantly, our recommendation about how government can look at these patterns and start deploying the right technology, the right approach. But it's equally important to understand that some of the recommendation we gave here will show that in as much as we believe that some of these conflicts can be solved militarily. However, most of them are issues that have to do with inclusivity, issues that have to do with economy, issues that have to do with political exclusion. So when we look at them collectively, we will know that while we are not saying that kinetic approach is not important, but we believe strongly that non-kinetic approach is something we should start deploying. So based on that, I will ask everyone to bring members of my team to come and run the report down for everyone to see. Then we'll go back and start taking questions, and that start answering most of the questions that gentlemen and women of the press are here to ask us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mugri, for that opening remark. Now, for the introduction to the next survey and conflict database, I'll invite Samuel Oluwajobi to join him. And presentation of the key highlights of the reports as Kenneth Madwafu.
Morning, everyone. And some of you welcome. We begin this next year. I need to next year already. We have been started in 2020 as tracked violence across Nigeria, across 36 states, including the SCT. Tracked violence like banditry, urban conflicts, forced clashes, kidnappings, gunmen, civil unrest, sectionalism, communal clashes, likes. The database, we will use a two-stage data collection and transmission mechanisms where we triangulate secondary sources with primary sources. Whenever any incident is reported in the news, we get the news. We see the other news sources also reported the same thing before it's recorded into the database. So once it's recorded in the database, we also have three enumerators who give us happenings around their vicinities. They send us, we have a collection to. They send us whatever happens, whatever incidents happen in the community, they send to us. And we have supervisors who confirm that those incidents really happen. So most supervisor confirms that incidents really happen, then we get put into our database. So this process is to minimize wrong incidents, wrong data, to make our data very, very robust and clean. We also belong to intelligence sharing platforms where we use to verify information we get. Whenever we get incidents, assuming incident happens in Abuja, we see if other resources are also reported, and we also check other databases if they are also capturing that same information. So before we report into our databases. So far since 2020, we recorded predominant conflict types. We have terrorism, banditry, former conflicts, autism, and bombing attacks. These are the prevalent conflict types in Nigeria. Terrorism, banditry, autism, all clashes, former conflicts, and gunmen. This lot of gunmen. So now, I leave Ken Madwafu.
Thank you so much for walking us through how we meticulously collect the data. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kenneth Madwafu. I'm a senior policy and legal analyst at NetScape. So this morning we'll be walking through highlighting some of the key findings from the data that was tracked in the last 15 months. For Nigeria in 15 months, we've recorded about 1,500 incidents that led to 5,319 casualties. That is deaths and injuries. So why the deaths are about 5,319? So why the deaths are 4,724? The injured persons are 595. But also concede that at the time of reporting, the numbers change afterwards in terms of people that are injured and maybe for people that are survived as well. In terms of kidnap counts, we had about 3,110 kidnap victims. For the 15 months, we tried to do a bit of comparison between Q1 2023 and then Q4 2023 and then Q1 2024 to see if there are changes. So we first compared Q1 2023 and Q1 2024, considering that they are literally within time frame, just a year difference. We noted a bit of a slight difference in the number in terms of both the incident counts as well as the casualties counts. We also noted differences in the kidnapping count. For instance, in the kidnapping count, there were more significant cases of kidnapping as compared to Q1 2023. We also confirmed that there are things that might have happened in Q4 2023 that could impact what we experienced in the first quarter of 2024. And in detail, the analysis will be captured in the reports that will be releasing afterwards. So before we go into how the regions performed in the last 15 months, we want to do a bit of flashback to 2022 to see what the numbers were. From there, we can now walk to what it was in 2023 and the first quarter of 2024. So for the regions now, for Northwest had most of the cases in terms of incidents and as well as the casualties. They also had most cases in terms of kidnapping. So the incidents led to both the casualties and the kidnap situations or the victims that we had as a result. In the Northwest in 2022, we had about almost 2,000 casualties compared to the North Central, where we had about 1,700 casualties. So I'm just going to quickly give you a sense of what it was in 2022 before we now move into our discussion for today. Beyond the Northwest and the North Central, the Northeast, we're already aware of the terrorism going on for over a decade or over a dozen years. And while we noted that cases of the incidents were minimal compared to the other northern regions, but the casualty numbers are pretty much high, way more than what was recorded in other locations, like particularly in the southern parts of the country. We'll move on to the southeast to show that we had about 333 cases, and then compared to 566 casualties and 134 kidnap cases. The south performed better than others with 197 incidents, 370 casualties, and 131 kidnap counts. In the southwest, is a bit better than other places, except say for the south. We have 231 cases, 419 casualties, and 132 kidnap cases. We also have to bear in mind that kidnapping cases are hugely underreported. So this is what made it to mainstream media. So there are chances that there are other cases of kidnapping that were not reported or captured by mainstream media. So now we've given you a bit of a flashback on what happened in 2022. Let us now draw more on what we noted in the last 15 months. If you work with me, you will see that Nigeria in the last 15 months, North Central and Northwest Nigeria still recorded the most incidents, the most casualties, the most kidnapped victims. Same as what was recorded, same as them leading in 2022. For the North Central had most of the incidents with 405 incidents that led to 1,868 casualties, I beg your pardon, and 841 kidnapped victims. For the Northwest, we had 332 cases, 1,441 casualties, and then 1,789 kidnapped victims. It is worthy to know that for the Northwest, one of the cases that resulted in the high kidnap count is the abduction of children in Kaduna earlier in the year in March, and other cases of large-scale kidnapping of dozens of people were captured. For the North Central,
It might be shocking to also note that part of the data that contributed to the high casualty, high kidnap counts, or relatively high kidnap counts in the North Central was the incidents that happened in Abuja sometime between the last quarter of 2023 and the beginning stages of the year, that is in January. For the Northeast has continually had lower cases but high casualty counts, and then lower kidnap cases than victims. Before now, at least in the last 7 to 10 years, the Northeast was notorious for large-scale kidnapping. But we've seen a change. We've seen that moving to the Northwest and the North Central, where large-scale kidnapping targeting schools have been recorded. For the Southeast had in the last 15 months 232 incidents with 392 casualties and 79 kidnap victims. If you log on to social platforms, you will see conversations that are last year happening about Southeast notorious for kidnapping. But our numbers here show that it has reduced from what we recorded in the previous year. So for the South, still maintained the performance or the stability issue that we have. We have about 200 cases in the South, and then we have 309 casualties, 158 kidnap victims. Then in the Southwest, recorded lower than the South compared to 2022, where we had 168 cases, 219 casualties, and 129 kidnap victims. It's worthy to note that both the South and the Southwest recorded more cases as a result of electoral violence that happened in 2023 and gang violence in those places. But I'll dwell more on the types of violence or the conflict types that we see in all the regions, so it will give us a better perspective or a better context to what is contributing to these numbers. If you are still with me, you will note in what is showing on the screen now that the North Central is prevalent conflict types that were noted from our tracking, even beyond the 15 months that we are running the analysis. You can see government attacks, farmer-indirect conflicts, banditry, kidnapping. I would like to mention that government attacks are incidents that have happened at the time of reporting when news media are not immediately able to identify the perpetrators. So government attacks becomes some sort of euphemism to say, okay, it could be bandits, it could be farmer-indirect conflicts, it could be regular armed robbers or criminals, or even secessionist fighters. So that is why, in what I would say in the subsequent conversation, that government attacks would have the most cases, largely because at the time of press, we are not able to say this is the assailants or these are the people, or nobody has come to lay claims to such incidents. So North Central, as I've said, government attacks, farmer-indirect conflicts, banditry, and kidnapping. In the Northeast, still on terrorism, government attacks, banditry, and kidnapping. In recent years, we've seen some sort of romance between what we call bandits in the Northwest and North Central with terrorists in the Northeast. So it is not surprising to see manifestations of banditry in the Northeast and also manifestations of terrorism in the Northwest and North Central. For the Northwest, we have banditry, government attacks, group violence, and kidnapping. To just talk about group violence could be unrest between two civilian groups. It could also be in cases of riots where maybe there are protests and then a bit of security clampdown on protesters that result in escalating riots. Those are what we call capture as group violence. But a detailed explanation of all these types of conflicts will be we have detailed them in the report, so we'll be able to give you a better perspective. For the Southeast, we have government attacks, like I've already said. Some of the violence in the region has been attributed to because they're not immediately linked to any of the known groups in the region. We also have secessionism in the South, East, and cultism and group violence. In the South is government attacks, cultism, group violence, and kidnapping. Although we have episodes of militant threats or agitation by militants, we already know that the region is saturated by, back in the day was saturated by militant violence. But we are not seeing violence in the region linked to militants. Rather, what we are seeing now is gang violence, that's cultism, group violence, kidnapping, and government attacks. For the Southwest, we have gunmen attacks, cultism, youth violence, and kidnapping. So we could see that all the regions have similar types of issues, just that their manifestations are different, same as their scale and frequency. That is why we have discrepancies in the numbers for the regions and notable consistency over the years of our violent conflict. For the last 15 months, I will now walk you through the most affected states. These are the states that we've noted most of the violence. You could also see that states that are featured here, also their regions were the most problematic for the country in the last 15 months and maybe in previous states. You can see Kaduna taking the lead on the incident counts, but not taking the lead on the casualty counts. We see Plateau State having more casualties than Kaduna, with fewer incidents. And then we could see Borno also having a high casualty count with fewer incidents and fewer kidnap cases. We can see that in Zamfara, we have lower incidents with a high kidnap count compared to the other locations that recorded the same number or range of incidents. We could also see that Plateau had lower cases of kidnapping. So one could rightly argue that Plateau State does not have a kidnapping problem, rather have incidents that are linked to actual deaths or injuries, but not kidnapping as a form of criminality. If you go to Imo is the first state to feature from southern Nigeria, from the southeast, about 74 cases with 115 casualties and 21 kidnap cases. So that has been a bit of reduction. If you compare it to the figures we noted in 2022 and 2021. In Rivers State came up from the south to record 8 incidents, 119 casualties, and 26 kidnap cases. As I mentioned earlier, part of the conversation on things going on in South Nigeria is as a result of electoral violence or thug that were recorded in the election or the build up to the election. Anambra follows featuring on the southeast with 62 cases, 119 casualties, and 26 kidnap victims. If you compare Imo and Anambra, you can see similarities in the number of incidents, the range of casualties, as well as the kidnap count. So it shows that the dynamics of the conflict in those places are similar. You go to Delta, you have 55 cases, 106 casualties, and 24 kidnap cases. If you compare Delta and Rivers, we also note some similarities. And then we have Lagos standing out from the southwest with 48 cases, 51 casualties, and 5 kidnapping cases. Like I mentioned earlier, kidnapping cases are usually underreported. So what is being captured there are mostly mainstream reported incidents or primary data sources that we use, or also the intelligence platforms that we belong to. Still work with me as I go through the other aspects of the data that we're highlighting. For prevalent conflict types, we have government attacks. As I hinted earlier, I'm going to talk to you about the most cases that we have. We have government attacks. As I have said, cases we are not immediately able to attribute to any party, or nobody has come out to claim responsibility for such violence. We had government attacks having most incidents, but having lower casualties and lower kidnap cases. Although the casualty cases and the kidnap counts was higher than the incidents. Well, for banditry, we had 381 cases with 1,880 casualties, and then over 2,000 kidnap counts. So it suggests that banditry, manifestations of banditry is tied to like kidnapping. There are cases of kidnapping tied to banditry, particularly in the northwest and the north central region. Farmer-headed conflicts, we have 119 cases, particularly in Benue, Plateau, and Nasarawa. And then we had cases in Imo State as well. For farmer-headed, we are not expecting any kidnap victim. And as slightly has been captured there, there is no kidnap victim. Rather, we had about 922 casualties, that is deaths and injuries indicating that the former header conflicts, even though seemingly overshadowed by other more prominent cases like banditry, terrorism, is still a very problematic issue in Nigeria. For courtism, we had 100, for court clashes, rather, we have 104 cases with 251 casualties. We see manifestations of courtism in the southwest and in the south. For the southwest, see it's happening mostly in Lagos, having gang wars. We've seen it in Rivers, we've seen it in Akwa Ibom, we've seen it in Delta and Edo and Bayelsa and the likes. And then for kidnapping, we had 84 cases with 88 casualties and then 150 kidnap counts. So casualties, sometimes kidnapped victims are still killed or in the process of taking them, they are caught in the crossfire. So that's why we're having casualties in the kidnap cases. And then for terrorism, we had 1 cases with 854 casualties and 73 kidnapped victims. You can see that kidnapping and terrorism have almost the same number of incidents, but terrorism is more lethal with 854 casualties, with most of them being deaths. So it suggests or indicates that terrorism in Nigeria targets to kill people rather than to kidnap, much more than we have it in banditry, which seems to both target the annihilation and also the abduction of people. For cessationism, we have 46 cases with 104 casualties. There is no significant number for kidnap counts. We also need to highlight that for cessationism, we've noted that it has been entangled with other forms of violence, criminality, especially where it's being recorded, that's in the southeast region of the country. Now we go into all the crisis types one by one. So we are narrowing down. For government attacks in the last 15 months, we see Imo State having the most cases, but Plateau having the most casualties, followed by Benue and Ebonyi and Delta. So Southeast and North Central and the states and the South featured in the government attacks, because these are places where the assailants are not immediately known or the records of violence are not immediately tied to an assailant or nobody has come to claim responsibility. So government attack becomes some sort of convenient tag for such type of occurrence. We've noted that most of the time as well, the casualty counts and the kidnap counts far supersedes the incidents, as you can see from Plateau with 46 cases and 146 casualties. Same as in Benue with 24 cases and 82 casualties, as well as Delta 22 cases with 43 casualties. Kogi has 19 cases with 18 casualties. We're also noting the consistency in the field of violence in Kogi, even as much as it is not high when compared to other locations. For banditry, we have Kaduna with the highest number of cases as well as the highest number of kidnapped victims. We also have Zamfara that comes second, but with the highest number of casualties. We have Niger State with lower cases, but with significantly high kidnap counts and casualty counts. We have Katsina having the same numbers or relatively the same numbers to Niger. Sokoto comes up with 24 cases, 110 casualties and 20 kidnapped victims. In Benue, we have 14 cases and 113 casualties, but we didn't note any significant number of kidnapped victims in Benue, which suggests that Benue might not have a kidnapping problem, but that has more lethal issues where people are killed or are significantly injured. Taraba, same fewer cases of fewer incidents, higher casualty counts, lower kidnapping count. In the FCT, as I indicated earlier, we had 10 cases and 5 casualties with 61 kidnapped victims. So we noted these high cases of kidnapping or banditry in the FCT, but mostly not happening in mostly not happening in the municipal, happening in periphery locations or places that have borders to Niger State, Kogi, and Kaduna State. These are where most cases of banditry in Federal Capital Territory have been recorded. We also have KB coming up with 10 cases, 55 casualties, and 12 kidnap victims. KB hasn't really been featuring in most of our tracking, but it's important to recognize it has come up here. So it's also good that relevant authorities are looking into what is happening in the area and what is making them feature in this type of analysis. Former header conflicts, Plateau remains like a hotbed, same as Benue and Nasarawa, as I mentioned earlier. Plateau had 52 incidents and then 624 casualties. Same as Benue, or likely same with Benue, 35 and 183 casualties. If you note in what is being displayed, all cases of former header conflict had insignificant number of kidnap victims, such that it wasn't even able to be captured by our data analysis tool, which shows that former header conflict does not have a manifestation of kidnapping, but more of lethal violence. Moving on to hot flashes in the last 15 months, southern Nigeria features most significantly with just Plateau states coming up from the north central. We have River States, Lagos, Ogun, Edo, Delta, Anambra, Kwara, Osun, and Abia states, as I mentioned earlier. River State is leading with both the incident count and the casualty count. Lagos follows comes second with incident counts, but Ogun State has higher casualty counts than Lagos State. Same with the other states as mentioned. Moving to group violence, we have more cases of group violence in Lagos where unrest between civilians versus civilians, market traders versus road transport workers, civilians protesting against one thing or the other on government, and we've seen those cases happening there. We also see group violence manifesting as jungle justice, mob attacks, and the likes. We noted such cases in Lagos, in Plateau, in Bayelsa, and in the FCT. We note that in the FCT, some protests or demonstrations target the FCT because many government institutions are headquartered there. So you can know that such demonstrations can happen here. We also noted some violence in Kano, Anambra, Kogi, Rivers, Ebonyi, and Osun. We could also note that some of the incidents were as a result of the 2023 general elections that happened. For kidnapping, we had FCT, the Federal Capital Territory, having the most kidnapping cases and kidnapping victims for the last 15 months, and still coming forth in most incidents. Plateau came best with 15 cases and then 26 victims. Delta, surprisingly, second with 11 cases and 14 victims, but the FCT, 9 cases and then 69 victims. And like I said earlier, kidnapping cases are hugely underreported. We also have Kwara, Kaduna, Adamawa, and Bauchi featuring them. If you note, so some armed groups or some groups utilize or employ kidnapping as a means of finance or as part of their modus operandi. So you could notice discrepancies in the numbers Kaduna has. If you come to banditry, Kaduna has more cases, and then one of the manifestations is kidnapping. But if it's purely a kidnapping case, Kaduna does not have more cases like when compared to places like Plateau, Delta, FCT, Bauchi as well. From the northeast, we are seeing Adamawa featuring Bauchi as well, featuring from the northeast in kidnapping that is not immediately tied to any of the non-violent conflicts going on in those zones. Terrorism, we have just 2 states, Borno and Yobe, which is not surprising in over a dozen years. The North has been plagued by terrorism, mostly perpetrated by ISWAP, the Islamic State West African Forces, and then Borno is like a hotbed, Borno in the base states are hotbeds, and but Adamawa is not featuring in this analysis. because they have lower cases than this other two. We have from 72 cases and then 746 casualties. Like I said, the type of violence is more lethal. So there is now there is lower concentration on kidnapping by the terrorist groups operating in the region. It's more to kill and kill. Secessionism, we have its manifestations chiefly in the southeast. We have Imo and Anambra coming to us. One southeast state is not featuring, which is Abia State. Although there is still like observance, mild observance of statum in the region, but we're still noting cases of violence in some other locations rather than in Abia State. We have Imo having Imo and Anambra having the same number of incidents, but with Imo just upping Anambra with one incident. So both states, Imo and Anambra, are pretty much high in terms of secessionism related violence related occupation. We also have in coming up. We have Ebonyi, and then we have a singular picture of the other states. And we also note for those who are in Nigeria that all the states are geographically linked with Delta and Anambra sharing borders. Projections. So we've done a bit of key highlights to show that this is what the numbers, these are the numbers that we've seen in the last 15 months. A more detailed analysis or breakdown will be captured in the reports that will be released. But it will be good to give a bit of projections of what's not predictions, but projections to say these are what we expect to be happening in 2024. If things remain the same or if additional efforts are not made to curtail the spread of violence or manifestations. So we anticipate that government attacks will continue in 2024, which has already been limited in the first quarter of the year. Banditry, we see that it's spreading and it will spread further and get more entangled with other security concerns, as we've already seen in recent years, its connection to terrorism, links to permanent conflicts, communal violence, and religious conflicts. We see that climate change is a concern for sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world. And we're seeing if climate change challenges keep coming up, people are going to be more challenged in accessing livelihoods in trying to survive. And we're seeing that climate change will impact more on peace and security structures or existing mechanisms communities are using to survive if adequate efforts are not made. And we are seeing manifestations in terms of low rainfalls that can affect agricultural activities, can also encourage movement of pastoralists or movement of other economic workers, which will command to the conflict. We're already noting that coming from the Lake Chad Basin, where pastoralists are moving southwest and they get entangled with sedentary farmers in Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa. We could also see some cases happening in gateway states to the southern parts of the country or the south, like Enugu and Ebonyi. So if climate change adaptation and resilience mechanisms are not put in place, climate change can impact more people's way of assessing resources to live. You could also see it in Africa, how it can affect current resilience measures against violence. Noted that the current economic challenges can push more people into criminality as a means of survival, or can also predispose people or make them more vulnerable to join criminal gangs. We are also noting that criminality or increase in violence can lead to more self-defense militias coming out to provide their own security, but thereby undermining formal security structures or efforts of the Nigerian government. Other projections, we are noting that criminal gangs and terrorist groups will continue to use ransom as a means to enhance their operations, or even generally as part of their modus operandi. We also see people that are not in more recognized or formally established organized crime networks indulging in kidnapping as a means of finance. We've seen cases where people not belonging to known criminal groups or armed groups using kidnapping to access funds. We see domestic staff collaborating to kidnap work employers. We are seeing families kidnapping or engaging to kidnap abilities and things like that, but those people are not immediately connected to any of the known criminal organizations. So while there might be some sort of decrease projections now still, while there might be some sort of decrease in incidents for terrorism, the lethality of the attacks are still very much there. We are seeing, even though we are noting lower cases of incidents, we are seeing at the same level of casualties that we are recording. So those things we are projecting that they will continue if adequate measures, additional measures are not put in place. In the first quarter of the year, we've already noted cases like that where terrorists are using explosive devices to attack civilians, or where military bases are being attacked, or civilian joint task forces from preventing formats units are being attacked. From social conversations or conversations happening on social platforms that we're tracking, there are a bit of current angst against the economic realities, and it's pushing. We are seeing veiled encouragement for people to take up, go to the streets and protest. We are seeing that these things can cause breakdown of law and order and lead to a more broader instability than the one we are already facing in different parts of the country. And then in secessionism, as we arguably said, is tied to as an entangled with criminality, further complicating the precarious nature of the issue, particularly in the Southeast. So we are seeing other forms of violence happening in the region that is immediately tied to like secessionism. So it's also good that we are noting this. For implications, I've kind of touched on the implications in what I was saying earlier, but I'll just quickly run through. So it's a no-brainer that meaningful development or economic prosperity cannot happen in the absence of stability. So of course we are having economic consequences where people can't go to the farms, infrastructure is destroyed, overall the development is affected as people can invest in an unstable environment. And in terms of education, we are seeing attacks on schools, where school children are attacked or schools are destroyed. Literally, terrorism in the northeast is against Western education. And then in the southeast, we are seeing how homes are affecting education on Mondays. And then we are seeing some schools adapting to such changes by having classes on weekends, like Saturdays. For humanitarian, to the incidents, we are noting more casualties than incidents. Nigeria is having a humanitarian situation where incidents are leading to more casualties, and we are not able to cater for the new realities that have come up as a result of the incidents. We are now having more returnees, we are having more displaced people, we are having more refugees, and we are having more injured people or people living with disabilities as a result of the violence that they faced. We are having people out of livelihoods or out of basic means of survival. We are also having inadequate basic amenities being destroyed by violence. For rural push urban pull, we anticipate that the violence that is mostly predominant in rural parts of the country will push people to the urban centers where it is presumably expected that it's safer and provides more economic opportunities for them. And then we are also noting that will increase urban poverty because of the skill set gap for people living in rural areas who do not have the in-demand skills in the urban centers and not able to afford the cost of living. That can increase urban poverty, increase slums in city centers, and also might lead to more criminality as people who are looking for means of survival in the urban centers, if they are not able to meet up with the cost of living, are not able to afford shelter, or are not able to afford any jobs. For weakening institutions, government keeps channeling monies into security, into operations, into weapons procurement, into rehabilitation, into reconstruction. And we're also noting that this type of things will mean that other sectors might suffer. Political instability or other forms of instability will weaken state institutions or state infrastructure in locations where government is not able to access or government and governance is poor or is lacking, in the sense that we call ungoverned or undergoverned spaces. Government is not able to provide protection or provide basic services, and it creates room for other armed groups to come in and then take over the place. We've seen where there's limited presence of government structures like police stations, healthcare facilities, or government institutions, and then people now have to fend for themselves or carve out their own path. We noted that these cases or scenarios like these are breeding grounds for terrorism or breeding grounds for armed groups or self-defense militias that often go rogue. At this point, I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and a more detailed report, a more detailed analysis will be captured in the 15 months report that will be released. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be taking questions now. Please, if you just raise your hand and then, all the panelists will answer your questions. Thank you. Please, you can go ahead. If you're serving them, I didn't hear you back the recommendations.
Thank you very much. I wanted to know you to expect the reports. Like I said, a more detailed analysis and recommendations will captured in has already been captured in the report. But this is more like to present the key highlights, let you see how we fared in the last 15 months, how the different regions have fared, and how the different violent conflicts that we're experiencing in the country has manifested. Recommendations are much more detailed and elaborate than coming during the session, during the reports that we have.
Yeah, and if I do add for each crisis type, there's a notification, right? So once the release of the report, they have that. And then there are implications for each crisis type. Thank you.
Yes.
You have any strategy for making this report and recommendations across to institutions that have mitigated this toward protection and
Yes, we have, which one of them is already what we're doing today. So I'm sure that some of you are going to report about this. Moreover, we are part of the consortium that will be starting the spring program, which is an 8 funded program called Training in Northern Nigeria. So part of some of the recommendations or some of the things that seen over the last 2 years, we go into the program that we are being as part of the consortium our company. So of course, we work with security agents, we work with civil society organizations, and as well work with other academia. So yes, we get the report out there. So we are sure that it will get to everybody who is to act on any part of it. Yes.
Yeah, it's also wanting to mention that the report and the data, it's also wanting to mention that the report and the data will track into our communications. And then we have October 20,000 email subscribers. Our subscribers are members of government institutions, security organizations, international development organizations, people from the academia, students, media, civil society organizations, or any other type of stakeholder working in the development space. We publish on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a weekly snapshot of incidents that have happened within a 7-day period. We publish on a bi-monthly basis, we publish on an annual basis, and on special issues as well. So we try to send these reports to relevant stakeholders who these recommendations are tailored to. So that's one of the ways by which we ensure that the data tracking, the analysis is just one aspect of the entire chain of activities that we have to do.
I want to ask on this issue of CITA2 Southeast. What do you think is maybe blocking us of this one? In the sense that 2 weeks ago, I was in Southeast on the report. And we flew in on the Monday. And the narrative now is not just about CITA2, but about the people themselves refusing to come out on a Monday because they are now so used to it that Monday has become a public holiday on the orders of ICON. And we'll sit there in Abuja to say on Mondays there's no movement in the Southeast. And incidentally, we went to the Southeast on the Monday and went to 3 states: Enugu, Anambra, Imo. And we are talking like CITA2, but a lot of people still carry that narrative that ICON was enforcing CITA2. Whereas this time, it is the people themselves that don't want to come out on the Monday.
Sorry, before you come in, if you check, there have been a reduction, right? What it used to be 2021, 2022 is no longer what it is in 2021. Like you mentioned correctly, their tax has reduced. Yeah. Generally just want to do what they want to do. But if that conversation about CITA2 is not really what it used to be, I can agree with you with that.
Yes, I obviously understand the point you raised. Because 6 months ago, down the line, I think I was in the South. I constantly go to the South. But the issue remains that because these attacks are not planned, we don't know if we or when it will. So most times people are like, I don't know whether there will be an attack today. So it's better to stay on the path of caution. So it's not that the attack is as resistant as it was, like she said 2 years ago. But there have actually been cases where you're not sure if you'll attack today or the next Monday. So that has led to a lot of people rather want to stay away than risking being attacked. But if you use what the data has provided for us, you will see that the attack has dropped significantly. Now, not just because of what the state government is doing. There are a lot of ongoing debates, there are a lot of discussion, conversation among groups in the Southeast, trying to do what they think is possible, to find a way to start resolving the situation. But it's equally important to understand that the situation in the Southeast is tied to a lot of things, and we all know that, right? And if we talk about the commercial hub of the country, the Southeast, in terms of the number of markets and economic activities that go on. But obviously, we see that these economies are big. I want to put the attackers over the gate because of the activities of this government. No, now like we all know, this has been tied, like Kenneth said when we were doing his presentation, these have been tied to a lot of other violent activities and criminality, which, judging from the ability of the state to deal with it, is very lean, it's very small. The state do not have that ability. The state now means both the military and the police, and not just the. So the question would be, what should we be doing? Are there really solutions to the issues in the Southeast that do not require kinetic approach? And that is part of what our report will be showing, that resolving the issue in the Southeast needs less than guns. It needs more of dialogue and understanding. And if we are deploying our military, our police, everything to all the states, and we're not getting results, why are we not looking at other alternatives? We're deploying and we're not getting the result. Are there ways we can start talking as the people? Are there things we can do? Are these only security issues? Are these political issues? Are these economic issues? So if you look at other issues, and compare it to what our dons and our nations have done for us, we will be charting another course. And I think the essence of this report is for us to do a reflection and look back and say, if we are looking at farmer header country and we're not getting results, what should we be doing? Are our people talking enough? People that lived in the same community, shared the same resources. So if we start talking, if we start pulling our resources together, more towards peace building than security, I think we'll start getting results. I think we are pushing more money into providing security than providing peace.
We'll take one question from
I guess part of what I want to talk on the southeast. So the incidents in even the farmer areas, clashes and the banditry. Some sort of talk with small, other farmer areas clashes is more of there are not surrounding it, it's not just about climate. There are some things, some factors beyond the climate issues that are responsible for it. Now, the question is the government, do they have the political will to begin to look at these factors to ensure that they are being dealt with? Because at the end of the day, they are using lives. These lives, one way or the other, they are precious. Also, one of them will be someone who has solution to the problem that Nigeria will also be possible to the crisis. And for the balance, some of them have come out to say the reason why we are going to run into this probably there's nothing to do. That we found for business is more economic than deploying the kinetic approach as well as so much. The other question is in your recommendation. Is government, are you asking government, ability to include government, begin to look at how to empower these youths, these groups who have the strength to work on because there's nothing to do, are taking up acts against the country? Does your recommendation include all this so that we now stop spending so much on arms and ammunition and now begin to look at other areas resolve these issues?
Yes, as you check across all the conflict issues, from bank to farmer headers, most of the people who take to this crime, from what I've seen so far, majority of them tend to be young. Yeah, and then Nigeria is still, we have a lot of citizens who are still poor. So there's that conversation that unemployment, poverty are some of the issues driving this conflict. And like you mentioned again, economic implications to this. If we are not really unless it's issues, so to build capacity to have some sort of like, I say later I've also but we're not doing anything. And I do manage and I do hand, right? So there is that tendency that people want. So whatever is there that will provide them something, they will do that. Yes, but an increase in the number of people who are kidnapped. And if you check, kidnapping is basically kidnapping. It's not like I know government is trying to move in that direction. There have been programs and things for use basically, but I think we still need to be there. So in terms of recommendations, what recommendations we have for this conflict issues have issues, have recommendations addressed to government of how to do this.
Okay, I like the point you asked if government and the political will want to do the right thing. Let's be a bit practical about it so that we can all understand. Everywhere in the world, at a certain time, every government either lacks the will to do something or want to do it in a different ways. But the most important thing, what goal do you want to achieve at the end of the day, right? So when we look at some of the political issues in the country or some of the conflict issues Some have been either over politicized or have been, or there's a mixture of it and other things. For an instance, when you talk about farmer elder conflict, it's important to know that it's a cultural issue, an economic issue, it's a climatic issue. So there are a lot of things, right, that has either helped in exacerbating it, including politics, which will make it will beautify it in such a way that one person will play on it to get what they want to get. Now, but then let's leave that apart and now look at, so what's the best approach? Some of the best approaches to solving it lies with the political and elite class. Because most times they benefit more from it than the common farmer and the common header. Now you could ask question, why are we not looking for the best way of transforming heading agriculture in our country to make sure that an average header goes to school, has a heading community have the best veterinary hospitals, a mosque, and everything they need for their livelihood. So why are we not pushing that direction? Right? So if you move your cattle from Sokoto to somewhere in River State and the cattle trades, will that same cattle be the same? Will it produce the same amount of meal and meat with the one that you kept in a place? But for these things to happen, we must talk as a people. Even the headers will see the sincerity that you're not trying to make them lose their livelihood. So there will be a lot of behavioral change. So it's a package. So you want to see the headers see the sincerity in what you want to do. Now, it's equally important for us to understand it's no longer a given fact that some of the headers are not the owners of the cattle. So who are the owners? So why are the owners not bringing out the best policy, working with government? Some people say maybe because they don't want you to know that they own the cattle, because they don't want to pay tax. So if I am going to start paying cyber security tax for my money, people should pay tax for having cattle. So maybe they don't want to do that. So there are so many conspiracies around it. But for all these things to work, the elite class must come out and say, we want to work together. And I think it's more of commitment, sincerity of purpose, and trying to make this country work. It's not a government thing, it's not about government. It's a state thing, meaning that even all institutions of the state, apart from institutions of the law and order must take place and must be sure that it works for everybody. It works for the big, it works for the small. But where you don't have all these things, these rules will never work. So people will continue to run them because you have weak institutions that is unable to implement them.
I'm sorry, before we take another question, we have a question from the online audience. Matthew, please unmute your mic and ask a question. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, this is Christian Ichite from Cameroon, Yaoundé, Cameroon. I must give kudos to the Next Year team for this fearless and very objective presentation of what I call the political economy of violence in our dear country, Nigeria. And most especially, I think I must commend Dr. Nwaokolo for this increased emphasis on peace building. And this is where my point is. As you know, peace building is catching on even at the international level. The UN is talking about peace building, moving away from peacekeeping, doing more of peace building. But the problem or the challenge that we have is that peace building is a very complex term. Secondly, the operationalization of peace building is itself also very complex. So I want to task the Next Year team also as you're talking about peace building, is it possible for us to provide more guidance to the people, especially at the grassroots, the community level, which you have just mentioned, on how exactly to go about doing peace building, how to engage the actors, how do we engage the processes, how do we get the financing, how do we get the elite to key into it, and then which are the best entry points, which are the areas of comparative advantages for us to be able to, move forward away from the weak institutions, a bit away from the hard security approaches that we've been having up till now, which seems not to be given the desired results, as you have just said in your report. So for me, I think it would be very nice for us to have one or two pungent, very, very strong recommendation coming out from this meeting, from this launching, because the entire world is watching. I'm joining from Cameroon. I'm very sure people are watching from other places. So let's not leave this forum without a very strong recommendation here, even before people pick up the reports to read. Right from here, I think we should have one or two, very strong one, a very strong message going out. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the opportunity to join. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us. And like I always tell people that every peace building is a state building, but it's not every state building that is a peace building. And why I think that is important is this. In trying to do state building, you can even kill for to sustain the state, right? And when you do that, people will tell you, okay, because you've killed everybody and there is negative peace, you've actually achieved peace. But that's a state building that you think you can use to achieve peace. However, you can as well say, okay, I want to do peace building in order to achieve state building, and I'm going to do it through this means or the other. So we've heard what he said, and I think part of this report is just to show that peace is important, and if you don't have peace, no matter how you think you want to achieve security, it becomes nearly impossible. So once again, Chris, thank you for your coming to me.
We have another question from the online audience, and this person says, what are your data sources and how do you collect your data from those sources? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. As Samuel, my colleague, mentioned earlier, we mostly use secondary sources, that is mainstream media reported incidents with national dailies only, not blog posts, not social media conversations, national dailies only for secondary sources. And we also belong to intelligence platforms that we always try to look at what's happening there, what information we get out of there. And we are now going into primary data collection where we are putting people in the field to collect data in real time. We also have a means for triangulating the information at different stages. So for secondary sources, we try to triangulate the information we get across national dailies. And then we also try to triangulate to intelligence platforms that we belong to. We have on the side some investigative journalists or journalists that report security issues that we also contact to confirm or verify cases that were recorded or incidents that were noted or found in one of our news sources or data sources. For primary data, we have more than one source in each location that we are working with. So we're able to match what information is being that we get from those locations. And we also try to triangulate it with what is happening or what has been recorded or reported in mainstream sources like national news. And sometimes we also make phone calls to confirm or verify such reports that we're getting from our primary data sources before we are now able to clean and store them in the database. So it's a much more meticulous process that involves more of the communication, use of data tools, and less social and human involvement to reduce errors. Thank you.
So let me make an addition to what Kenneth just explained. because we work with secondary data, especially from news, sources. When we get such report, because we are all conflict and security analysts, and we understand what looks like implication and all the nuances in each of them. So when we get a particular report from a news source and we read through it, like when he said, when we see a report that says gunmen attack, unless we have not seen anything linking it to all the variables that we have for each of the governments, we will now store that one as gunmen attack. But if I get a report now about a particular area in Benue or a particular place in Kaduna, and as we are reading the report, maybe the journalist who reported it says the secessionist agitation in Kaduna, and in that he now says 20 people were kidnapped, and if we are reading it, we are not going to record it as a secessionist violence or incident. Why? Because we understand the incidents in those places, we understand the variables, what are the makeup of such particular kind of violence. So if I see a report now, let's say in my village, and I read it, I will tell you whether it's this or that. Why? Because this is what we do all the time. So we take the report from, we take the media reports, we sit down as analysts, we read through it, and now see whether it falls within here or here. So you could have titled it as a journalist, Farmer Header Comment. But when we read it, we will now reshape it and title it bandit, because it has the variables of being a bandit at heart than a Farmer Header.
I think it's also worthy to mention that we have a dedicated team that tracks. It's worthy to mention that we have a dedicated team that tracks on a daily basis the incidents, and also liaises with our data sources in the field or intelligence platforms to ensure that we don't miss any of the verified incidents that happened, or we don't have the numbers list of it.
Okay, before we proceed, please, we have another follow-up question from Chris, online audience. Thank you.
Sorry, that was a mistake, please. I was supposed to have, put down my hand. I'm sorry, that was a mistake. Yeah.
Any more questions, please? Yes, the people will share that, and then we'll send the slides to you, so you can what is reading? Yeah, because for each person's type, there are regulations and different stuff. So yeah, maybe we're not reading for each, we have like 6 recommendations. But you want us to, but in the slide, they're going to share with you get the recommendations.
Yeah, so for recommendations for Southeast. Yeah, so recommendations for Southeast, we noted that violent conflicts in Southeast is fragmented. On the one hand, we have secessionist implications. We have criminality, we have forced lashes, We have very significant cases of permanent conflicts. And what others might also for political assassination going on. We feel or we understand that these things are connected or somehow have become entangled with that. We're not looking at them from the same prism. So recommendation is to unpack the different types of violence manifested in the region and then create solutions that addresses each and every one of them. For instance, the solution that might address or seek to address secessionism in the South is different from the one addressing issues related to border clashes, issues relating to kidnapping, armed robbery, or issues relating to political assassination. Because, for instance, the secessionism in the South is not a current occurrence. It has been there for decades. It's just that we've now witnessed, or we are now witnessing a more fierce agitation. We are now witnessing a more violent agitation, or we are now seeing police or security and intelligence organizations linking violence in the region with secessionism. So we are now anticipating that while repressive measures might not immediately work or might achieve just temporary stability, for a much more durable or sustainable peace in the South is a combination of both kinetic and non-kinetic measures will be able to first address the violence, and then on the non-kinetic side, address the agitations or the social injustice or the perceptions of marginalization and whatnot that people are using or are fueling such secessionism or agitations. And then in the kinetic measures can now capture issues around criminality that are now tied or entangled with secessionism. But using a one approach to issues in the region will not work and might not achieve the solutions. If you notice, if you take time to glance through what has happened in previous years, depression has not worked. Rather, we are seeing a much more broader, fiercer scale of violence in the region, unprecedented since the Civil War. So now we have to tailor solutions to each of the crises in the region.
Yeah, for one area, like you mentioned, if you recall what you mentioned there, it's like it tends to go, it's more of an economic issue. So the recommendation we have here is actually tied towards human life, which creates employment for kids in the region. Then increasing policing in these areas. Then in terms of governance, to ensure there is more of community policing or some interaction between community members to provide intelligence for security measures. So there is that need for community and then the security actors to work together. And then the last one we have here is there is also need or is essential to more of arms in the region, so that will reduce people's access to arms. So,
for common headers, like my colleague also has stated earlier, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to address these stakeholder management issues as regards to how interventions are targeted towards farmers. We have seen rural settlement, we've seen national livestock transformation, we've seen cattle colonies, and how the assistance or how such initiatives were found upon. And we've seen states coming up with anti-grazing laws, and that is a much more politicization of the interventions. So if there is proper stakeholder management in such interventions that look at capturing who the actors are, who the spoilers are, and who stands to begin better. But if such interventions are not targeting the actual stakeholders or carrying them along, we are not going to get buy-in that because we are having two socio-economic groups fighting. And so, like my colleague said, it's even much more than economic. It has cultural ties, so it's a very sensitive topic for some people. So for people to move away from what has been the norm for them, something much more modern, there has to be some stakeholder management, some engagement that has to consistently happen. And there's also that good suspicion going on. So you have to also manage those narratives that then influence how people accept or react or receive interventions. We also need to cover the climate side of things that is making people more dependent, more mobile, moving from point A to point B, and even making people that are not moving losing more in terms of low crop yield or low rainfall. So if you're also able to capture those, you stand a better chance. And then it's also important that you try to isolate farmer headers from the other issues that is now being connected to, because in environments where farmer header conflicts are happening, other forms of violence are happening. We are seeing communal clashes, banditry, we're seeing kidnapping, we are seeing secessionism as well. So you have to like factor in that farmer header conflict is happening alongside other forms of violent conflict in the country.
So let me take on one recommendation that we made on kidnapping. So if you see what we said about kidnapping here happens in different strata. So you have kidnapping that occurs out of banditry. You have kidnapping that occurs out of terrorism. Then you have kidnapping where it's not tied to any known conflict. But it's important for us to know that one key element to solving this is issue of using technology. Tracking technology, especially tracking system. The world has moved ahead. Countries like Colombia, where we have issues like this, are started finding solutions. We're in the world of AI now, artificial intelligence. So what is it that we cannot do if we have a good technology and tracking system? When somebody calls the family and say, I have your family member, bring this X amount of money, are we able to say this is the geographical location where the person is held? At times, yes, families will say, I don't want to report. Why? Because they do not trust the state's ability to be able to rescue the person. So they will decide to want to pay. But I think if we're able to improve with our use of technology, the use of things like drones and so on, and look at the pattern and understand all that, maybe it will help to build the confidence of people that they need for them to start reporting. Again, it's important for us to know that kidnapping is an economic venture now in Nigeria, and it's a value chain. Most times they do not act alone. And there are a lot of people within the value chain who do one thing and the other group does the other one. So I think government have to start looking into it very well and start deploying technology into it. So now that we're saying most times there are a lot of platforms that monies are being transferred to. So what are we doing? So if we are talking about terrorism financing, should we probably be looking at terrorism finance and kidnapping financing in the country?
Sorry, I think you did mention something about the reduction in the risk of conflicts by everything. Has that not been related to the issue of Naira? No, we never already did that. But at that time, there was no card circulation for people to get even the reports. There are some of these signs of giving people money to go and pay. So would that equally help? Probably should be part of the.
I think that was the fallout, but I think the most important thing was that we wanted the election to go by all means possible. So we did a lot of things that ordinarily that we have either relaxed, not doing them now. There were a lot of things we did from the state security side. There were mopping up of arms and so on. The state actually came out because we felt it was important that that election was good. So after the election, what next?
Yeah, but if I could add, there was also an increase in military commissions, so it wasn't just about the Naira. It wasn't just about
Elections and other issues.
So the election was more important than other things. We have to So whenever we want information for the it's there.
All right.
Okay, in the absence of any other question, Dr. Olu will give a closing remark. Also, somebody wants to know when they'll get the reports. So if you could please mention that, you're checking them out. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Again, let me thank everyone who made out time to join us in this, the release of this report. Thank you to the gentlemen of press who are here and ladies as well. As well as those who are online. It has been 15 months of trying to put this report together. I know a lot of people will read it and we feel very sad, especially where death becomes almost like sacrifice. Our essence, the essence of this whole thing is not to let dampen anybody's spirit, but to just believe there's light at the end of the tunnel, especially when you're looking at the fluctuation of data. It shows that if we as a country come together, we can do more to start safeguarding our country. There's more we can do. And what this report has actually done was not only to show the trend, but to show the kind of projection and most importantly, give some recommendation. So it's our belief that those in authority will read this report and run with it, find a way to start implementing some of the recommendations that we made. On the release of the report, we are a bit challenged by technology. So I'm sure we'll release the report probably by close of business today or first thing in the morning. So we are just going to release it. It's ready wanted to release it this morning, but we'll be challenged by a few things, but the report will be out today or first thing in the morning. Thank you, everyone.